right, good afternoon, everybody. This is Scott Reed with Duck Sports Authority. I'm on with Marcus Harper, offensive lineman for the University of Oregon. Hey, Mark, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. How about you, Scott?
Good. Long drive home this morning. We are fortunate we're able to do RV because we cover from the press box, but I
Okay.
don't really want to drive home at 9 o'clock at night. So we got out
Yeah,
this morning and good drive home. So it
yeah,
went well.
that's great.
Let's talk about last night. I thought, from my view, I thought the entire offensive line played its best game of the year. How'd you guys feel in the game last night?
Yeah, no, we felt like we set the tone early. And that was the biggest thing that we needed to do was making sure that we set the tone early, especially with all the talks of like, that was our first true, Big Ten game last night in Michigan, going against a great opponent in Michigan State. And so we just had to make sure we were setting the tone, making sure we were communicating our boxes and making sure we were finishing. And I felt like we set that tone early. We continued that wave all throughout the entirety of the game. And so, yeah, we came out. We were very pleased with that result. We didn't realize how many yards that we had put on the ground and in the air until I think maybe like the end of the fourth quarter. And I think we were very pleased with that, but still lots to improve on.
Yeah, I thought I saw, and those offsetting penalties on a couple of the plays. I watched one situation where it looked old-fashioned straight drop back. Dylan Gabriel had, I think, 8 seconds to throw the
Yeah.
ball.
Yeah, I remember that.
Um, Nobody open in that case, but it was just a really good pocket, and I thought I saw a lot of good run blocking. Probably the best run game I've seen all season long. I thought you guys created really good lanes, and obviously Jordan James, he took advantage of everything you put out there for him.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, like you said, the run game for sure was a key component that we had to establish for sure. We know what we can do in the pass game, but making sure our run game complements that even more was a key focus. And, we did that early on. And like you said, Jordan James and Noah Whittington are the are phenomenal running backs. They're hell to deal with. So, I mean, once you get those guys a small crease, it makes it worth their while. But, I mean, you give them bigger holes, and, I mean, they do the rest.
Yeah, that 41-yard gain was a nice run by Jordan. Let's kind of look ahead. Have you had a chance to look at any of the Ohio State film yet?
Yeah, just take a look at it. I've been going back and forth between looking at the game at Iowa within a couple hours ago, but I haven't gotten too deep into it. Kind of, just recovering from last night's game and getting into it. But I know for sure when I get a full look at them, I'll do a dive on them as well.
Yeah, they're going to probably present, I would say, the best defensive front you're going to face all year. And I know Michigan State was probably the best you've faced so far. So I think it'll be a interesting challenge. You looking forward to kind of the atmosphere next week? It's going to be pretty crazy in Autzen.
Yeah, I mean, it won't be as a shock to me. I played in some pretty crazy game in Austin. I believe UCLA 2 years ago was my first like big college noon kickoff game, I believe. And so that was a big atmosphere. So I think for me, it won't be as much of a shock. I mean, I've been in some crazy environments before. So this will just kind of be another one onto the list. So, but I'm excited for the opponent. First time, or I think ever since I've been here, Ohio State will come to our house and play. Just those Ohio State fans travel. And Watson presents itself as it does on any given Saturday or Friday night. So it'll be fun to really have that be something that I could kind of check on my bucket list. Because last time Oregon played Ohio State, I wasn't a contributing factor in that game, but it was nice to go to the shoe and just being and infused in some of that rich history that the Ohio State Buckeyes present, and for them to kind of come over here and come to our stadium, it'll be nice for us to have that game kick off next week. So.
Awesome. Now you took me back. I wanted to ask about that anyway. So you went back to the 2021 game at the Shoe. That season didn't end exactly like most people wanted to. A couple of losses to Utah late in the season, then Mario Cristobal leaves. When Dan Lanning came on board, what was the first thing he said to you?
I don't remember exactly what he said to me. I just knew that where he was coming from. He had just won a championship with Georgia the year before. And so I knew the type of mentality that he was coming in with, trying to establish, a different culture here at Oregon. And so for me, it was this opportunity to know that, like, look, I hadn't been a major contributing factor over these last 2 years to Oregon up until that time. But I know what I'm capable of and what I can offer to this team. And so I knew, even if he didn't say anything to me, I knew I was going to get him to talk to me from what I put out on that film. And that's exactly what I did going into that spring when he first got here. So I'm pretty sure he has a lot of words to say now. But yeah.
Was it like being re-recruited though when you had a new coach come in? You'd already gone through the recruiting process once, and new coaching staff, and you got to go kind of through the whole thing again?
Not necessarily. When those coaches come in, you kind of just it's a little bit of a feel for what the culture does the culture that the coaches present doesn't match with what you're trying to get accomplished as a player. Obviously, like, what Landon was trying to get done or is doing right now, obviously aligned with what I wanted to do in college. And so it's kind of a match made in heaven. And then offensive line coach at the time, Coach Clinton, he presented himself with his years of expertise at the time, and what he could bring to the offensive line room and just, add a different flavor to it. It was real nice at the time for me to have a switch up, and I just took full advantage of it.
What do you think about Coach Terry? I know he's a different creature, different animal, just because he's a young guy and has a lot of different kind of energy. How's that working with him?
It's phenomenal because I don't know if most know this, but when I was a freshman, I was a true freshman. Coach Terry was the offensive line G at Oregon, and me and him have kind of like ascended simultaneously in the same, like, in our careers throughout the year. So when he got the job at Hawaii, I think that might have been my first year starting with Landon. And then obviously to have him come back and be my full-time offensive line coach, it's been a kind of a surreal moment just to see a guy come, kind of start from the bottom at the same time you're starting from the bottom and ascend to what he's ascended to. So it's great having Coach Terry in that room. And yeah, it's fun every day. The law firm that he's brought on with Coach Mike Kavanaugh, with Ryan Walk, with Caleb and Dallas, with everybody, that whole crew of guys. It's fun going to work with those guys every single day. But it's been great having all of those guys come back, because I remember Dallas was kind of like a mini recruiter for me when I was coming on the scenes in high school, and to kind of have him now be in that room, and then I played with Walk, and then now have him as my offensive line G a couple years later. It's kind of it's a surreal moment, because again, you remember playing with those guys, and I get asked the question a lot, like, is it weird playing with them or having them coach you? Well, no, not really. Those guys kind of took those roles on premature in my career, so kind of just they put official title to it. So
Nice. So I'm going to go kind of up forward now. You've been doing the Big Mark show, and I've actually kind of liked it. I thought the first one was really humorous, interviewing yourself. I really like that. And then,
yeah,
the stuff, it was kind of almost poetic that you interviewed Nishad Strother in your second one, just because I think the change that we saw when he came in to guard and Poncho moved back over to center, I think that's when we saw the change where the offensive line kind of started clicking again in a way that we expected. Talk a little bit about the Big Mark show, how that started, and why you are kind of looking forward to doing stuff like that.
yeah. Well, for one, I've always known myself to be a guy of big personality. Um, and I mean, opportunity presented itself. I was just talking to a mentor of mine. He connected me with some people over at Sports Illustrated. And I mean, for me, the Big Mark show was obviously just a blip of my imagination. Never thought for it to come to fruition so quickly. I thought it was going to be something way down the line, when I'm in the NFL. But I wasn't thinking of it to be anything like that was going to happen now. And so the opportunity presented itself, and I took it and ran with it. I was like, you know what? You don't see any, if only a few offensive linemen in college doing this. Why not you be the pioneer for, having offensive linemen just be, spokespersons in the media. You got a lot of guys like Jason Kelsey who have some personality to them, and you see what he's been able to do with New Heights. And so for me, I was just like, you know what? Let me just start my own thing. And I feel like it was in such Big Mark fashion to interview my own self for the first interview. And so I had a great time, and I enjoy every episode of it. Every time I do it, I like watching myself grow as a media personality. I like watching myself just grow in terms of like how I ask questions, who I'm interacting with, everybody from offensive lineman, like you said, to Nashai and Matt in that first interview, to in my last episode, just talking to Evan and getting to know him. And so actually I'm kind of starting to kind of create the outline for what the October guests are going to look like, and I'm kind of just seeing who do I want to have on the show that's going to challenge me. And so that's been the biggest thing moving forward. But I mean, I like it, and this is something small right now. Obviously, I see the Big Mark show, ascending to bigger heights in the future. And yeah, I'm just kind of just waiting, just kind of just doing my thing right now.
Yeah, I watched the Evan Stewart one. I'll bet you people are surprised to learn he was more into soccer before football, and that
Yeah.
it was one of those football.
Yeah, I think those are a lot of. I truly believe that's where you find some of your best athletes. Some of your best athletes may not be found on the football field originally. That's kind of where me and him kind of had a little bit of a relating factor. He, like I said, he was in soccer prematurely to football, and I was in basketball. And we both, ended up at Oregon. So that's the thing that you kind of will see in the foreseeable future. I think some of your best athletes in the sport that they end up, finishing off at, you might not see them in early on. So I think that's great for all your athletes to kind of pull from that story.
Absolutely. And then you talk about that you were in basketball. Kind of what was that changeover like? What was it that kind of motivated you to get more into the football side of things and move that direction?
Yeah, so I honestly all of my life never really wanted to get into football. I'm gonna be quite honest with you. But I think when I got into middle school, that hunger to try to get into it kind of started brewing up. My dad would not let me. He was offensive lineman at his high school, and he simply just told me, he was like, "Look, I know kind of just from high school, like those beat ups that you take on a weekly basis." He's like, "You're not doing that. Like, I'm sorry." And so that forced me to do every other sport in the playbook just growing up. So I did everything from soccer, like I said, basketball obviously being the main sport. I swam for a little while. I did a little bit of golf here and there. I played some volleyball in middle school. What else? I basically did the whole nine. I did t-ball when I was younger. But yeah, I practically touched every single sport with the ball involved. And football just kind of was the one that was my niche. But that transition, I knew basketball wasn't working out early on. I 7th grade, I was a basketball team manager. Ended up making the basketball team 8th grade year and losing a bunch of weight. I'll talk about that in another interview at some point. And then I go ahead but at that time, 8th grade year, I'm like the 4th center. I'm like 5'10". I don't have like no crazy like attributes. Like I don't have like a crazy vertical. I'm in this weird spot. Like I have the thickness of a center, but my height doesn't match. And so then going into my freshman year of high school, those passes start coming on, and I get a little bit of a growth spurt. I go from 5'10" to about 6'2" and some change. And then go from there. And then I'm kind of just like, let's see what comes from this football deal. I remember first time I was on the football field, put strapping on that helmet, just the bottom buckle was where the top buckle should have been at. It was all types of wacky. But I remember, so my freshman team, we split it up into two, like the A team freshman and B team freshman. And I was kind of on the edge between being like a full-time 18 guy and kind of bouncing back and forth. And I remember offensive line coach Bobby Venegas, he was like, "Look, if you don't start turning this up, you're gonna be on the B team." And I think me not being a main contributor in basketball, that hunger to want to be, be a main contributor in a sport, I was like, that's not gonna happen. And I remember going against, I forgot who it was, but I think it might have been Sandberg my freshman year, Carl Sandberg. I pull tackle, I was at left tackle, pull the tackle, kick out the defensive end on the other side. His helmet rolls off. And that's kind of where I figured out that football was like my niche moving forward.
So that having gone through, and Michael Jordan's story is pretty well known, where he was, and it's debatable how it actually happened, but cut from his high school team as a sophomore, and he says that motivated him to get better. Do you think that kind of adversity helps you moving forward? I mean, you're at points where you're going to face adversity in college. Do you think the adversity of having had to go through something like that, where you're like, I'm not finding my niche, and now I finally have, how does that help you kind of in life in general as a college athlete, getting ready to kind of transition to the next stage of your life?
Yeah, I mean, it prepares you to see truly what you're made of. I know a lot of guys in those scenarios, they kind of back out and be like, "Oh, well, since it's not for me right now, it'll never be for me." And I've had some of those moments reoccur up in college too. Again, not starting immediately, just kind of seeing like, look, if it's not for me in the moment, that doesn't mean it's not for me at all. And so just that perseverance, that that stick-to-itiveness, I think a lot of people don't have that in them anymore these days. I think a lot of people, sometimes quit prematurely and they never see the fruit of what they work for. And so I just prided myself. I was like, well, I've done this. I think at that time I was like 11, 12 or what his bracket was when I did that in 7th grade year. I had to do that again, getting acclimated to college. And so I'm always going to have to pull from that experience. So the fact that that's a core principle, a core experience of like who I am as a person, I don't see it being a negative at all. I think it's additive, because I think, the how old was our freshman year in college? The 18-year-old Marcus pulled from that 11, 12-year-old Marcus. And, so I'm always going to have to be pulling back from that experience. And certain things like that, you just can't teach on the football field. That stick-to-itiveness, like as much as you can coach it, it has to be within the person to want to, stick something out and kind of see something of themselves. And I mean, I'd be lying if I say if I had the confidence and the knowledge to kind of stick through it with all throughout those years, especially those early years, those growing pains. But I've had some great mentors. I've had some great coaches just along the way who, I mean, they believed in me sometimes when I didn't even believe in myself. And that same pattern keeps pulling up now. So, I mean, I'm blessed, honestly, in that area. And I'm just, yeah, I always pull from those experiences. And I mean, it's helped me, weather through a lot of storms that I know a lot of people have and just will continue to fall out prematurely, where I just tend to buckle down even harder and stick through it. And I always come out on top on those scenarios.
I think people forget it's been, 5 years since the 2020 class since you signed. Sometimes people forget that you're from Illinois originally. And I saw the greatest quote when you committed, and it was you were talking to Tim O'Halloran of Edgy Tim, and you said people ask you why Oregon, and your response is why not Oregon? What do you think has helped for you being this far away from home for this long? How's that been for your family? How's it been for you? And kind of how's that helped you grow as a human being as well as a football player?
Yeah, that's crazy. I forgot that I said that. Is it something that I would say? Absolutely. That doesn't surprise me at all. The choice is kind of set out for me black and white when I made that decision when I was what, 16, I think, when I committed, or 7. I just turned 17. I knew it was going to put into me a set of a level of independence and a level of maturity that would kind of just hyper I don't know, hyper jump my learning curve in just terms of like just life. I was 2,000 plus miles away from my front door. I know a lot of scenarios, just basic, just living scenarios, how to function in society. I can't go back home and call mom and dad and be like, hey, yo, like, can you help pick me up from this scenario? Like, I have to, figure it out. Right. So that experience I told you about that happened at 11, 12 years old, that was already like sunken into my core as a little boy. Now that those roots are even deeper as a younger man, because I made that decision to travel 2,000 miles away from my front door, and come to a place that's really like just unknown at the time. I never had been to Eugene before my official visit, and the second time I had come to Eugene, I was moving in. And a lot of people could look at that and be like, well, what the heck, like, you know. But I saw it as opportunity for me to, challenge myself. And that's what, like you said, that 2020 class, like, back in high school, I was not one of the bigger names coming out of high school. That class was highlighted with, Dante Manning, Noah Sewell, Justin Flo, Robbie Ashford, all these, high, top level recruits. And Marcus Harper II was, a small 3-star at the bottom of the name. And so I was like, you know what, if I truly believe what I'm capable of, going to a school at the time that had that was my biggest offer on the list from that at that time. Let's see what I'm really made about, and I know, once I come out of this on the other side, I'll be a better man at the bare minimum. Like, at the bare minimum, I'll be a better man at this, because I know from the ages of 18 to 22, I've traveled 2,000 miles across the way, from my front door, to just stick out life, just learn life, and that came with some challenges in itself. That came with some difficulties that, I had to stick through it and figure it out on my own. And I think a lot of people just don't have that level of a culture shock until they're probably, the first time they have it is probably when they are 22. And I get to say I did that when I was 18. So that's something else I hang my hat on. And to look back, and I'd say this all the time, sometimes with Dante Manning, whenever I get the chance, but like, it's literally just me and him from that class. A lot of other people, they've gone on to, other different things, whether that was the NFL or just, injuries or, different schools, whatever. But for me, I wear it with a sense of pride that, 5 years ago, 4.5, 5 years ago, you look at that 2020 class, and as a 3-star, close to the bottom of the commitment sheet. And then now at the end of it, one of a top guy in the country, as often on the offensive line, is Marcus Harper II. So that's a story that, again, you just don't see a lot of people have no more. But it's a story I pride myself on. And again, I wear that hat with pride, because, you just don't see those stories, especially now with the NIL space. You just don't see a story of that magnitude no more.
It is getting rare. And one of the things that I think I saw you can talk about it, is you did graduate this past summer. So kind of talk about the excitement for you, for your family, what that kind of means for everybody. Because it was a big moment when I graduated from the U of O. I know it's got to be big for you. Kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. that was obviously another contributing factor in me coming back for finishing out one more year was to grab that degree, and making sure that, hey, like finish everything that I started. And that was a big accomplishment for me. I'm a first generation like student athlete, and a lot of people in my family just truly can't relate to the low and my time commitment that I have balancing between athletics and academics. And so to come out of that and have a paper, that I truly worked hard for through and through. And also too, what I've also put into my craft on the field, and kind of see, both, come to fruition. It's again, I wear that with pride too. And I don't know if anyone knows this. And I mean, I always, whenever I do something, I always end in big mark fashion. It was funny. I was walking across the stage, and we had a slip of paper that we were supposed to give to read off our names or whatever. And I guess I had scribbled it so many times because I was trying to figure out like what's the right way, for me to kind of go out and walk across the stage. And I guess the whoever was reading our name cards couldn't really articulate my handwriting very well. So on my Instagram page, if you go back and look, there's a Instagram reel, and he's like, Marcus, do you want to read this? And I'm just like, look, we're going to the league. I think the question was asking me what we're doing post college. And he was like, I said, we're going to the league. And it was in such a big mark fashion because everyone else had their names written off. I mean, they had their names called off. And for me to kind of, call myself off, that's such a big mark way to go out. And so I think that just encompasses like who I am as a person, big personality. Whenever you put me on the big stage, I'm always shine.
Now, I know you obviously plan is for next levels to go NFL next year. What are your plans? Do you have after football thoughts? You're doing some media stuff now. Do you kind of see yourself getting into that kind of stuff as an after football looking thing?
Absolutely. And I mean, whether it's we could do my own radio show. We could do my own network. I don't know what that future holds for the media, but I do see myself in the media space to some degree. The magnitude of it, I can't even tell you that I put any thought to it. But I mean, I've gotten a lot of feedback from, the Big Mark show, from anytime I do any interviews, like people truly love listening, to me, to me speak. I've heard on several different occasions that I truly have a gift for being on that camera, being underneath the mic. So obviously like just continuing that and making that a career is something that I just see myself doing. So I have no problems with me saying that I could double down and get into this media thing because it's something I love to do.
All right, so you got a big game this coming week. Ohio State, I haven't looked to see what they're doing in the second half. It was 7-0 at the halftime. How hard has it been to not look forward to that game through the first 5 games of the year? I know it's been circled on the calendar for fans for, since Oregon got announced to the Big Ten, and I know people have speculated about whether it's affecting the team. How hard was it to not get caught up in what's happening until now?
Yeah, our team does a great job of blocking out the noise. And we've done a great job of taking it 1 week at a time. And so, if I had to tell you, there's one person on the team right now that's been a big spokesperson for don't you dare look at a game ahead of the schedule, is Trayshawn Holden. Trayshawn Holden said, there's been times throughout his career that teams he's been on has looked way further ahead, to opponents, and it's kind of affected how they've gone about their business. They're taking care a week, week in and week out. And so I would say he has been a very, very, very vocal piece when it comes to like, look, don't you dare look past, whoever we have next on the opponent. Don't let a future opponent beat you right now type deal. And so Trayshawn has done a great job of kind of holding us to that standard and making sure that we're taking it week by week. Because he's been a part of big team. He played for Alabama before he came to Oregon. So he's seen what it looks like. And you can't take as much as you can't look forward to an opponent prematurely. You can't let the opponent that you have currently, do you any damage. So he's been doing a great job of holding us as a team and making sure that we take it week by week. And that's what we've done. And so, again, now we're just looking forward to the next week. And the next opponent just so happens to be Ohio State.
And it is going to be a big game. So I'm going to go ahead and let you get out of here. I know I'm really appreciative of the time you've taken to talk to me. I want to make sure to remind everybody, go ahead and check out the Big Mark Show. I will put this on our message boards and link it below this video when I post it so you guys can all kind of see. I'll link all 3 episodes. I think it's been great just kind of watching your personality evolve in that show because you're right, we don't see offensive linemen very often. I know Jason Kelsey a little bit, but we just don't see them out front and center talking to people. And I think it's been awesome to watch. people forget offensive linemen are more intelligent than people give them credit for. You got to know the entire offense. You got to know what everybody's doing on every single play and every single potential shift of responsibilities. So check it out, you guys. I think you'll all enjoy it. And again, thank you so much for your time today. And I wish you a lot of luck the rest of the season. And maybe we can catch up sometime later in the year.
Absolutely. I look forward to it, Scott.
All right. Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.